Hi, and welcome. This telehealth series is presented by NOW's New Mexico Quality Improvement Initiative. This initiative focuses on optimizing care for neonates at risk for opiate withdrawal syndrome. This 12-part curriculum is designed to give providers, nurses, care coordinators, and community members content-specific training and education with opportunities for care consultations around this focus. And I'd like to welcome our presenter for today, Stella Lopez.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stella Lopez. I am the one of the social workers at Presbyterian in our NICU. I have a LMSW, and I will be talking to you today about some of the CYFD reporting protocols for NAS referrals to CYFD. So, as most of you know, NAS, also known as neonatal abstinence syndrome, is a term for a group of problems which happens when a newborn withdraws from exposure to certain drugs that pass from the mother to the baby during pregnancy. This information was taken from one of our brochures that we do have available for our moms regarding neonatal abstinence syndrome. The important thing to remember is that when the baby is born, the exposure to the drug from the mother's system stops. So that's what causes the baby to experience NAS. This can occur as early as 24 hours after delivery or even as late as 7 days. So it's really important that we monitor the babies. In our next slide, I've actually been able to obtain the most current statistics from the New Mexico Department of Health. And what it shows is the top 10 NAS rates by county, by the county of the mother, where the mother resides in New Mexico. And as you can see, Rio Arriba has quite a bit of score there. But it does break down. I just wanted to give a little idea of some of the statistics that we have, and I'm almost certain that those statistics are quite higher, after this last couple of years, and I can almost guarantee you that they're going to continue to grow. So I just thought it was important for us to see that. The other thing that's important to those of us in Bernalillo County is although these are the numbers that show in the counties, a lot of those we in Albuquerque get a lot of those transferred into our hospitals. So I mean, hopefully next time we can get some more statistics that show actually what we have going on in our hospitals in Albuquerque, and I bet you those statistics would be quite higher than these. So I thought that was important for us to see. So ideally, we like the early identification to happen during the mother's prenatal care, and at times, the OBGYN, midwife, or however they get their prenatal care will go on ahead and either screen them at that time, report their history, etc. But when they finally get to the hospital part, we get them in labor and delivery. And so at Presbyterian, we have a policy or protocol called a neonatal abstinence syndrome policy. And what that purpose of that policy is to help the nursing staff and doctors identify and stabilize clinical manifestations of withdrawal in infants with NAS. It includes an assessment and intervention so that's kind of like what we use. I'm going to go a little bit more into detail about some of the ideas that they use that help them identify the risks. So drug exposure, if they've had any positive drug screens during pregnancy, history, if they've ever used prescription drugs or illicit drugs, if they've had limited or no prenatal care, any obvious evidence of drug use, or if they come in high or acutely intoxicated. Those are other ways that they're able to screen for a urine drug screen. So other considerations that they use include high-risk behaviors. So if moms have provided information that they may have sexually transmitted disease, or if they are maybe being trafficked or participating in prostitution, If they have an unexplained placental abruption, or if they go into premature labor, infants born with neurological complications, or intrauterine growth retardation, or evidence of, like I said, being intoxicated, or withdrawing symptoms. So once the assessment's made, and the mother does meet one of those criteria for the drug screen, urine drug screen or UDS is ordered by the physician. And the mother has the one thing that's important to know is the mother does have the right to refuse the urine drug screen. So there are times where, if that occurs, we do I believe that the practitioners let them know that, that's something that alerts them to automatically ordering a urine drug screen on the babies. And so what they do is they order a urine drug screen on the meconium and the umbilical cord. And in this instance, consent isn't required by the mother when screening the infant, because the screening is related to the clinical plan of care. So the doctors don't need to get consent from mom for that information. So when the results of the UDS on the mother come back positive, a social work consult is initiated by the practitioner. And then at that point, the social worker will go in, meet with the mom, usually while mom is still in-house or still inpatient, and they conduct an initial assessment with the mom. So during the interview, the social worker obtains the following information from the mother. So information like the substances that's being used, if the mother is using, how long have they been using, has it been throughout the pregnancy, how much do they use, how often do they use, if they have a plan on stop using, because we do have moms that are like, they just do not want to stop. If they have a medical marijuana card, if the substance that they're positive for is THC, if they're in any kind of a treatment program, if it's like a medically assisted treatment program that prescribes them Subutex, Suboxone, or methadone, we like to know that information, the name of the doctor or program that provides the treatment to them, and how long they have been in that program. So once that information is assessed by the social worker, they are required to advise the mother that it is our due diligence as a social worker and of the hospital to report any infant that's positive, or mother that's positive for illegal substances or even legal substances without proof of a prescription, to CYFD, which is Children, Youth, and Families Department. This also includes those that have medical marijuana cards. So sometimes this can be difficult because parents aren't always happy about those situations. They may not feel that it's necessary. It just kind of depends, but it's always good to provide that information to the parents and let them know that a report will be made, because they do deserve to have that knowledge, and so that it doesn't catch them off guard because at times the workers do visit. So once the assessment is complete, they notify the mom. The social worker will go back to their office and initiate a call to State Central Intake, which is a division of CYFD, where you report. And so they will call State Central Intake and conduct a report with them. So when they call, the CYFD operator will ask questions regarding the mother and the infant that include some of the following. So they'll get basic demographic information, like all the adults and children that live in the residence. One thing I would say that's important is when you're conducting your assessment with the mom, make sure you have all that information, like the name of anybody that lives in the house, the dates of birth. Those are all important information that help CYFD cross-reference, if they have other cases with this family, and a lot of times they do, so it's very helpful. Other information that they ask for is like what the substance the mother and the baby was positive for, They'll ask for the location of the baby, so where the baby is in the hospital, the bed space, the floor. They'll ask if the baby's experiencing any withdrawal symptoms. So it's kind of important to know, like, if the baby is being given any medication to help with that, and what kind of symptoms they're having. They also ask if the mother is in a program and want to know what her position and status of the program is. And then they'll ask basic safety questions for the investigator, just in case they have to go out to their property. They want to make sure that their investigator is safe. So once the report is completed, the social worker will have to wait. We at Presbyterian, we wait only a few hours. Pardon me. We wait a few hours to allow the report to get processed and to verify if it's screened in or out, because those reports generally go to a supervisor at CYFD. At that point, the social worker gives CYFD a call back to verify the status of the report. So here's the process of once the report has been received. If the report was screened in, it should be assigned it'll be assigned a priority level. So there's 3 priority levels. So the first priority level is going to be emergency status. And what that status indicates is that a CYFD investigator must make contact with all the parties involved within 1 to 3 hours of the report being made. Generally, what happens there is, especially if mom is still in-house or still inpatient, they'll come to the hospital. They'll go to see the baby, and then they'll go up to the mom's room and talk to the mom, and just get an idea and start their report and investigation. A P1 emergent status indicates that the investigator has to make contact with all parties involved within 24 hours of the report. So, and that's one of the ones that we usually the main one that we get when we report moms that are that have substance abuse or positive drug screens. I'm sorry. So that's one of the main ones that we deal with. And so then there's the P2, which is non-emergent status. And what that one is that it's the same thing. The investigator must make contact with all parties involved within 5 calendar days of the report. Sometimes we get that one. That one happens when there's marijuana use. I don't know how they determine which drug is more important, but sometimes if it's just marijuana use, I don't want to say just, but if it is marijuana use, they are, they kind of don't feel, I guess, as much of an urgency. It just kind of depends on all the social factors. There's a whole lot of things that play into that. Now, if the report is screened out, what that means is CYFD does not consider the information that was provided to meet the criteria to initiate an investigation. So that happens at times. It just kind of depends on the way the information is presented to CYFD, the initial call that is made to SCI. So it's really, really important that when the social worker is doing that initial assessment with the patient, that they get as much information as they can, because the more information they're able to provide CYFD, that's going to give a better outcome of the report being screened in or screened out. So once the social worker determines the status of the report as being screened in, they can call CYFD back to find out the name that that CYFD has assigned a worker to the case. So at that point, once again, back to the whole P1, P2 status, the CYFD workers either going to attempt to meet with the families in the hospital, or they'll go to their home and conduct the investigation in their home or wherever they can meet with them. 9 times out of 10, the worker will come to see the infant in the hospital setting just to verify their condition and where they're located in the hospital. Social work at Presbyterian, the social worker is contacted by the NICU staff as soon as CYFD worker does come, if it is, in the earlier hours of the day. And at that point, the social worker and the CYFD worker engage in conversation to provide whatever information that they have, and just to make sure that the information that was provided in the SCI report was properly reported, because at times, depending on how a person perceives the information, sometimes it might get lost in translation. So it's really important that the social worker that made the report actually does engage with the investigator. If for some reason the social worker that made the report isn't available or isn't there, the NICU staff or the nurses at bedside will get the business card of the CYFD worker and provide that to the social worker at a later date. And then also throughout the time that the infant is in the hospital, the social worker will collaborate with the CYFD worker, generally on a weekly basis, just to provide information on the status of the infant or the status of the discharge, and also how well mom is engaging with the baby. Based on the CYFD worker's investigation, and that investigation can actually go on throughout the time the baby is in the NICU, or even it can continue on after the baby is released from the NICU. So while they're investigating, they will collaborate with the social worker and come up with one of the following decisions prior to the time the baby is discharged. I'll just read them first. So they can do in-home services for the family. They can implement a safety plan. They can help administer guardianship of the infant to another person. They can place the baby on a 48-hour hold, or sometimes the moms will want to do a voluntary adoption. And I'll get a little bit more in detail with each one in the next couple of slides. So if the CYFD worker decides that they want to provide in-home services for the family, what they'll do is they will let the social worker know that the infant is okay and cleared with CYFD to discharge home with the mother, and that services will be provided in the family home after the baby is discharged. With that, the way we do it at Presbyterian is we will get a copy of the documentation that is provided by the CYFD worker and just place that in the baby's paper chart and document that in the medical record. This is one of the ones most common that we deal with when we have the NAS babies, implementation of a safety plan. So when they put a safety plan in place, the mother and the worker from CYFD both have to agree on an adult that is able to be cleared by CYFD, and that person will serve as the safety monitor. Every CYFD worker has a different style, the way they implement this. Sometimes it could be the father of the baby that is cleared. Sometimes it's a family member. It just kind of depends on the one that the mother and the worker both agree and are able to be cleared. With the safety monitor, they're required to live in the home, and they act as the primary caregiver of the baby. And they are actually required to be present anytime with the baby, anytime the mother is engaging with or the infant. And sometimes the mother and the father have to be monitored. It's not just the mother. So I know in the slides a lot of it refers to the mother, but some of the situations is in regards to both parents having to be monitored. So the social worker does assist the NICU staff in coordinating with the safety monitor for infant education, providing cares, and then when it's close to discharge, overnighting in the hospital with the infant before they're able to discharge. So the social worker will help make sure that the safety monitor has been notified and knows and is able to have access to coming into the NICU in order to do those things. And then once again, a copy of the safety plan documentation is placed in the infant's physical chart, and then a note is placed in their medical record. Another type of discharge situation is guardianship of the infant. So in this situation, sometimes moms are in fear that they're going to lose their child because of some of their previous incidences or issues they may have had with CYFD. So they will give guardianship over to a parent or maybe a friend or a close relative. And so that guardianship gets administered through a district court judge. At that point, the parental rights are terminated. So, and it will note that in the document and say that the parental rights have been temporarily terminated. And so when they're terminated, that means that the parent can't come in without the guardian. So they basically are not the parent anymore. They have to get the permission from the guardian to come into the NICU. The social worker will assist the NICU staff in coordinating the same thing, the guardian to engage with the infant education, providing cares, and then also, once again, if overnighting is necessary prior to discharge, they will help the NICU staff coordinate that with the guardian. And then a copy is placed of the guardian documentation is placed in the chart, and a note is also placed in the medical record. This is one that we don't see a lot of, but they do happen. From my knowledge of CYFD is not to take children, which everybody fears that. But this is one of the incidences. So like they place a 48-hour hold on a baby. So so after their investigation, the CYFD worker, determines that the safety of the infant requires removal of the infant from their parents. So when this situation occurs, the CYFD worker will come down to the hospital. The police are contacted because they are the one who initiate the 48-hour hold, and CYFD is provided custody of the child. So the police officer provides the documentation, and the social worker will get a copy of that and place that in the infant's chart. And then the CYFD worker identifies a foster parent or parents for the infant. So once a foster family has been identified for this baby, the social worker will meet with the foster parents, obtain their identification, and place a copy at the front desk so that we're able to identify them and they can come in and provide cares and start participating with the baby. Then the social worker will once again assist NICU staff in coordinating with the foster parents for the education, providing cares, and then once again the overnighting if it is necessary with the infant prior to discharge. Once again, a copy of the 48-hour hold documentation and any other documentation that happens through the foster or adoption agency gets placed in the chart and the medical record. And then finally, the last one, this one doesn't happen quite often either, but it does happen. So a voluntary adoption. So if a mother decides that she is, once again, like kind of the same situation as the guardianship, she's worried that she's going to lose the baby, what have you, they will voluntarily adopt, sign or ask for adoption. So here, a mother signs her rights over on her infant to an adoption agency. If the social worker identifies that the mother is interested in doing that, then we have a couple of agencies that we coordinate with, and so we'll help assist with that. So the mother does sign her rights over to the adoption agency. If there is a positive urine drug screen that's involved at that time, CYFD still has to be notified, but their involvement is limited. So although the mother is voluntarily signing her rights away, she still has a certain liability for what has happened with the positive urine drug screen. So CYFD does need to be notified because mom may have other children or there might be other children in the home. And so that's why we notify CYFD. So here, the social worker has to fill out and sign the discharge of infant to a non-custodial individual form. That's a form that we have through Presbyterian. And what that does is that allows our NICU staff to discharge the infant to somebody who is not the actual parent. So then the adoption agency provides and presents the adoptive parents to the social worker and the NICU staff, and then the social worker will meet with them, obtain their identification, place a copy at the front desk, and then once again obtain copies of the documentation to be placed in the baby's physical chart, and then notation is done in the electronic medical record. So basically, once one of those items happens, the infant is discharged. The social worker will contact the CYFD worker they've been working with, just to let them know that the discharge did occur, and follow up if there's any additional services that can be placed. This will allow the worker to know that at what point they need to begin their in-home services or other follow-ups that they need to plan with the family. That kind of concludes my part of this presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
I just wanted to verify. So when we first get then a positive urine drug screen, whether it's on baby or mother, we should be contacting CYFD. There isn't a specific law or anything, but their recommendation, and as mandated reporters, we should be thinking about the safety of the baby and allow them to make the decision about what needs to be done, if anything. Is that correct?
That's correct. Definitely. Any positive urine drug screen on mom or baby definitely will need to be called in, and we need to leave that up to CYFD to make the determination if that's a situation they're going to screen in or screen out. It's our job as mandated reporters to make sure we're making those reports.
And then they make the decision based on our report as to what to do.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time.